Hello, everyone. We're in Los Angeles, California at Writers of the Future. Well, let me rephrase that. We were at Writers and Illustrators of the Future before anybody gets on to me about don't hate on the illustrators or anything. I have a young gentleman with us, and we're going to talk in just a minute. Remember, guys and girls, if you want to catch up to us, we're on what, 3 YouTube channels, 5 Facebook pages, LinkedIn, MySpace, you name it, we're on it. Just type in United Public Radio, UPRN Talk Radio, or even UFO Paranormal Radio, any of those. We'll bring you to one of our sites where you can listen. This interview will also be put on Roku. It won't be on tonight, but tomorrow we'll go up and be posted with Roku and everybody else on the sub-channel for Writers of the Future under United Public Radio channel. So be sure that you can see this young man, and he's looking good. Y'all can see him on his 70-inch TV and stuff like that. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is David Hankins, Writers of the Future, Volume 39.
Ooh, 39. So right off the bat, how many times? Oh, wait, you didn't say what you were. Writer, illustrator, author.
Oh, writer.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yep.
We had a lot of illustrators ahead of you.
That's true.
I said, so go ahead. So how many times?
So I submitted to Writers of the Future 5 times. My 5th one was the winner.
That's pretty good, actually, man. So since I've been doing this, the longest one is 47 times.
Whew.
That's he's a regular on one of our shows. As a matter of fact, he has a show on the network. The shortest, of course, for some reason, the illustrators, there seems to be a lot of first-time winners. I'm not sure why. They just seem to be there for some reason. Writers didn't have it. Writers have stiffer competition in a lot of different ways. And I said authors are just, you got to have to work harder. Where somebody might knock out a piece of art in a month or two, sometimes a novel's going to take way longer than that. Don't get me wrong. I've seen illustrator art take forever. But I have noticed for the most part, illustrators can get their stuff together faster than the authors can. Now, are they going to make more money? That's anybody's guess there. I've noticed when it comes to both industries, and it just depends how good you are.
Sure.
Anything. So, first, what made you decide how did you find out about Writers of the Future, and what made you decide to do it?
I found about Writers of the Future by Google. I had written 2.5 novels that I was querying and getting absolutely nowhere. So I thought, hey, I need some credits to my name. Started Googling writing contests. At the same time, I was Googling writing workshops online. And for all of that, Writers of the Future popped up for everything. So I thought, hey, this looks pretty interesting. Some pretty good prize money. Had no clue how big it was. And so I took the writing workshop. I wrote my first story. It was the first short story I'd ever written, and submitted it, and it came back as an honorable mention. And so I was hooked on short stories at that point, and really just kind of dove in, learning everything I could, studying, the art and craft of writing like a law student studies for the LSAT.
So, I find it interesting because I've been to 4 or 5 of these different conferences, these different contests over the years. This is the only one I've seen so far that gives feedback. Like, okay, if you did this, maybe this will help you get your novel in, or they'll give you honorary mention, but sometimes they'll give you a list of things that can help you to get story better, which surprised me because most places I go, they're like, well, you didn't win, sorry.
Right, you either won or you didn't. That's it.
That's really it. And then and it always bothered me. I'm thinking, these people are working hard to get these stories in or get this artwork in, and they need feedback. And so what I've learned from this group, and I'll be honest with you about this, when I first heard about this, I was like, no way. That's why I'm here now. Because when John came on my network, he kept telling me about it and blah, blah, this. And I'm like, John, I don't believe you. I said, no, nobody blind judges BS. I said, what are you getting in there wanting $500 per person, or is there a fee that we don't know about to get them in? And he's like, no. He said, no, the judges need to. I said, whatever. And I said, I'm not getting involved in it because I don't believe you. And so he calls me up. He said, I want you to come out to LA. This is 3 years ago. I'm like, really? I said, all right, I ain't got nothing going on right now. Come out to LA. So I get out here, and everyone I talked to answered me right off the bat. There was no. It didn't matter if it's Author Services, Galaxy Press, or the judges. When I asked a question, they told me the answer. So that was very refreshing. And then when I got to talk to judges and said, is this really blind judging? They're like, yeah, all we get is a number. I'm like, really? That's all we get, Joe. We don't know who it is. We don't know what color it is, what sex it is. I was like, wow, I was impressed. And the more I dug into it, and I've been now going on 3 years with him, and I've talked to him a lot of times. I spent a lot of time with him. And I've been impressed. And I do consider John and Emily to be personal friends of mine now. So the fact that this goes off the way it does, and they spend the time with y'all that they do, I'm surprised. So now, so you're down there with Jody and Tim Powers. What do you think?
It's been fantastic. So they've got a wealth of knowledge that they're able to provide us, and one of the things I love about it is they have different approaches and perspectives on everything. So one of them might say, "This is absolutely the way it has to be," and the other one says, "No, it's not.
No, it's not.
I've done it the other way, and it's worked perfectly."
Yes.
And so that simply learning that there is no one right way. There are multiple paths to getting published, how to manage your work, and all of that. And they're all right ways. They're just a different way works for different people. And so that's been really, really great learning from them.
Well, I've always found their bannering to be quite interesting. I've watched them for a couple of years now, and they never get mad at each other.
Nope.
They just say, I watched Jody go,
Right.
and I just I had to leave once or twice because I didn't want to laugh, because I'm just pressed. I don't want to be laughing. But it was great. And then Dave Farland, I can't remember who he was judging with the year before. These two went at it nonstop the entire time. But they were both telling you something, and they were both right. It was just, he did it this way and he did it this way, and this is how he came to it. I will tell you this about Dave too. I spent year before this, him and I spent some time at the pool with a bunch of the writers. And we were going over how do you start your business?
Sure.
How should you be an S corp? Whatever. We went through the whole 9 yards. This was a free education for people that you'd probably have to go to school again. Because really and truly, both of us have companies, and we spend a lot of time saying no. Do this way. And they said, "Well, I want a corporation." I said, "How much money do you make?" I said, "You don't want a corporation."
Yeah.
I said, really and truly, for most people, sole proprietorship on S corp is a way to start out, and then you can go from there.
Right.
You just want to protect yourself, or you want to protect your material or your home, whatever it is, from other outside influences. So it's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Those
that feedback, that pay it forward mentality is one of the things I love about the science fiction fantasy community and Writers of the Future in particular. As I got into the contest, initially, I didn't find the forum that they have. And then once I found that, and I realized, there's all these other people that are talking about it and helping each other. They're not looking at each other as competition. They're looking at each other as, hey, we can help everyone else improve. And, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I learned so much from the Writers of the Future forum. I would definitely say that I wouldn't be here if I hadn't found that forum and connected with the people there that were paying it forward. Past winners who had come on, like Wolf Moon, Martin Shoemaker, just the people that came in and said, "Hey, I've worked hard for this knowledge. Let me, help other people to shorten their time span," and it worked for me. It was 18 months.
There's some older archives that I did with Wolf about 4 years ago. And we got into a lot of stuff. Wolf is great. He's hilarious, but he's a wealth of information at the same time. And we crisscross a lot of things because, they have to treat me like a beginner. Right. Even though I've been with them a long time, I understand a lot more than I did. Still, I'm not an artist. I'm not I'm not a writer. And I'm definitely not an illustrator unless you can't stick me. It's not helping me.
Same here.
So it's not going to happen. Now I will tell you this, and this shows you how really good they are. So, after 3 years, I managed to get 22,000 words down, and which is not too much for here, but and Emily, eventually when I get finished with it, I'll just send it to Emily and say, okay, tell me how screwed up it is, and go through and check the grammar and every other thing.
Right.
And she told me she would do it. So, but I've learned a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things. So my biggest problem is, and now you can talk like this, but one of my biggest problems is I could never. So if I could tell a story outright, I was fine. But it's like, I was walking down the street and it was a sunny day and the birds were chirping and the lightning blew me up. And regardless, the filler always kills me. It still does, but I understand it better now.
Yep.
But it still kills me. So for you, I mean, did you have any real hurdles when you first started writing, or did it just kind of flow?
I have. So I've kind of run into that as I've gone from short stories back into the novel form. So short stories, it's all about being tight and condensed, hinting at a lot of things without giving full descriptions of, the birds and the trees and the lightning that just hit you. But as I've gone back into the long form, I realized that my descriptions were very thin. I just took a class with Dean Wesley Smith that was all about, getting people deep into your story, and it's all about the description, letting them feel and smell and taste whatever it is that your character's in. And I think that really helped me expand my world back out.
Dean's a great guy. I mean, I've talked to him quite a few times, and we spent a lot of time he was there when we were talking about all the S corps and all.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's the thing with all of this. Not only are you going to learn how to better yourself as an author, you're going to learn the business end of it.
Yep.
And that's not just something that anybody, that's for, like me, when I first started my first company, I learned trial and error, which I'm going to tell you was not fun.
That can be expensive.
Yeah, it can be. So, for y'all, I just like it and I notice all of them. I've talked to over 20 judges now. I'm friends with at least 8 of them, good friends with. I'm probably friends with more of them, but I'm friends with at least 8 of them close. And I have yet to see any of them turn anybody down.
Yep.
Even after they've been going, I was, a couple of weeks ago, I had Jeffrey Weiner on. We were talking about AI. And so he's an author, and we got to talk. And he's Timothy, what's his friend? Ann McCartney's son. And or Ann, whatever. My brain is fried today. But anyway, Ann McCaffrey's, I'm sorry. And that's her son.
Todd McCaffrey.
Todd McCaffrey. Yeah, Todd, he's a judge here.
Mm-hmm.
Todd and I have a blast together. He's as crazy as I am. But when him and Dean get together, it's how you got the banner between Jody,
right?
These two and something else, man. They go back. Dean's like, no, that's not how you do it. And I was like, no, I'm telling you, this is how you do it. It was great. I mean, it kept everybody's attention,
mm-hmm.
So everybody was paying attention to what was being said. But the fact of the matter is it didn't matter. And anybody who asked him a question, they answered it.
Right.
So the only thing I've ever told any of the people when I talk to the winners, I'm like, look, unless they're obviously in the middle of a meeting with a bunch of judges or something, you can just approach them.
Yep. And it comes back to that pay it forward mentality. And I've had multiple judges tell me, straight up, hey, if you have a question, whatever it is, just ask. We will respond. Send us the email, and we'll.
They're good about it. I can honestly say, because I keep up with a lot of the winners.
Mm-hmm.
We give them airtime and stuff like that, because a lot of my hosts do authors.
Mm-hmm.
They like when Jeffrey, who's on the Friday host. That's the only thing he does is authors. He don't do anything else. And because he's trying to be an author. He's wrote a couple of books, but he's still got a lot to learn. But that's what they want to do. We got about a dozen hosts. That's all they want to do is authors. So I always tell them, and they do authors from all walks,
mm-hmm.
which is nice. The better the story is great. But so what was the story?
My story is Death and the Taxman.
Oh, yes. I didn't get to read any of this. I want to lie and say I did. But
yeah. So Death and the Taxman is the Grim Reaper comes to reap an IRS agent's soul, who, through the use of black magic, switches their places. IRS agent goes off as the Grim Reaper, and Grim is now stuck in the IRS agent's dying body, trying to figure out how to switch everything back
He's gonna get out
and how to be human.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read it down. Yeah, for some reason this year there was some kind of mix about it. They usually send me an audio book, or they just send me out a book. But for some reason I didn't get one this year, so I said, okay, well, so what I'll do now is I'll read it on the way home, flying in, and also bringing everybody back, so I can actually go through it.
It's a really good anthology.
But I got to say, all the stories I read last year and the year before I've read in 36, 38 of them from where I've been present,
mm-hmm.
and then I'm on volume 28 now, so I've read from 28 to 38.
Fantastic.
And well, I'm interested in them because that's like they're not so long that you're like, oh mm-hmm. Jesus. They're just long enough that you get interested in the story.
Yep.
And sometimes they're just long enough that you get interested and you're like, wait. What the hell? Where's the rest of this story at, man?
Right.
What is this? It's a cliffhanger. What the hell is this?
Yep.
So now this question, I know you'll love this one. So I know y'all had to do 24-hour story.
Whew. Yeah, just finished.
Yeah, so I've watched these people do this now, like I said, for 3 years. It is something else. It is. So how did you feel? When they told you, what were you like? You're crazy.
So when I started, I was like, I'm pretty confident I can do this. I had one time we got a late anthology call. It was a specific request to the Wolfpack writing group saying, I need something in 3 days. And I was like, I can do that. I wrote a story, got it critiqued by a couple other people, got it submitted within 3 days, and got it accepted. I was like, I can do a 24-hour story, sure. And then they gave me my thing that I had to write about. Like, I'm looking at other people like, I got a story for that and that and that. This little thing that they gave me, I'm like, I don't even know what this is.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they hand them something to write about, and they can,
Yep.
they can be most interesting.
And so I took last night, I think I had 3 or 4 false starts, wrote a couple thousand words of like, I hate my character, not doing that one, write something out. Nope, that doesn't work. My plot just got too complex. So I'm tossing stuff out, fall asleep thinking, I'm not going to finish this. This is horrible. Wake up at 2:30 this morning and just keep going at it. And slowly, through a bunch of trial and error, which isn't how I normally write. I usually plan things out and then fill it in. So a bunch of trial and error, I managed to come up with a plot that has a beginning, middle, and end, some actual character arcs, a little bit of humor, and I'm actually kind of happy with it. Needs some cleaning up.
Well, I got a friend, his name's Nick Redfern. He's got about 114 books to his credit now. Mm-hmm. He writes 9 to 5, 5 days a week. He says he goes into his office in the morning, shuts the door, and he starts writing. Mm-hmm. And then at 5 o'clock, he's done writing, and then he goes on whatever he's going to do. Now, I know this is not how most authors write. They just, most can't seem to do it that way. Mm-hmm. And, Nick's got a lot of books, and some of them are good, and some of them are like, yeah, okay, dude, no, whatever. Just don't even waste my time with that. But when you're pushing out that many kind of books, you're bound to have some bad ones, because it's a job. And you start losing some of the good stuff in it. So, how many words, most words you ever written?
In a sitting?
You could do sitting and total. What you think?
I think my most for a day is probably like 3,000 to 5,000. Actually, no, I'm going to say for the last 24 hours. I wrote a 6,000 word story, and good. I had at least another 6,000 words that I deleted.
Well, it's not really a short story. It's 12,000 words.
Well, it ended up as a short story of 6,000. But I've, like I said, I started out doing novels. I've got 2.5 that were about 80,000 each, and I've got a novel-length version of my winning story, Death and the Tax Man, that I just finished. That's just over 50,000.
Damn, that's pretty good. I know that's getting up there with Elron. I mean, he's got 100. I think one's 100,000, one's 150,000.
Yeah,
I know Battlefield Earth, I think, is 100,000. I think Missionary is actually bigger though. And
because that's like 10 volumes.
Yeah, it's like 10 volumes. Yeah. I'm on volume 3 right now, and I still haven't gotten past this Saltar guy. He's just such a cheesy bastard. I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, I don't want to give the story. He's just a cheesy bastard. That's all I can say. But I've been, story started a little slow, but I've been kind of enjoying that. It's got a little further along, and I'm big in sci-fi anyway. I'm a geek by heart. I can't help myself. Any favorite? What favorite genre? What do you really like to write in?
I prefer to write in fantasy. I've discovered, because I've done some fantasy, some science fiction, and the fantasy stories come easier to me.
Clara, before you write to us and ask, fantasy is fantasy. Sci-fi fantasy is something different.
Whenever I write in science fiction, I always tend to flip into science fantasy, which I've discovered for the short story markets is very hard to
imagine with it. They're going to want something a little bit more detailed. I noticed, what's really crazy is the X-Gens and the millennials are really more in depth. They want something more deep. The new gen, the Z gen is not yet. They're still young. So even they're in their 20s and all. They're more ADD, so they're kind of like, I don't know if I can sit there and read that for that long. But I have faith that all that, when I was young, I was one way. When I was older, I was a different way. So I'm figuring that's what that is. That's going to eventually wear itself out. Baby boomers, on the other hand, they'll read anything you get their freaking hands on. They are just reading fools, is what they are.
Well, that's one of the great things about having so many available novels out there. You've got your short ones like I'm writing at 50,000 words, and then you've got your epics at 150,000 words to 400,000 words for 10 volumes, and different people like different things.
They got different things. They really did. I wonder if they're going to premiere part 2 of Dune this year. So we got to see their actual premiere of Dune before.
I heard about that.
Yes, and so I met the guy who wrote it. Right, I'm like, look, dude. I said, I know you now. I said, John's like, Joe. I said, I know who you are now. This thing better be good. I'm tired of half-ass Dunes. I want something good. So I sat there and watched it, and I was kind of like, I mean, everything was fine. The characters are good. It's just, I didn't expect it just to stop before anything really happened. You know? So they're moving out to where the story really starts to get good, and then it stops. And really, truly, I've always bitched about Dune needed to be more than one movie anyway. It's a big story. It's kind of like Battlefield Earth. That should have been a trilogy. At least 2, but a trilogy. I mean, if you ever really want to get a story told, and then I was talking to John about it, I didn't realize, because I had read the book, but I didn't realize that the Harrier jets weren't actually in the book. I had forgotten, because I had read it, and it just so long ago, it just went out of my head. And I was like, well, there was a lot of things that and then I hate to say this, John Travolta, I love you, but I don't think you were the right guy for that. I think we needed somebody a little different.
I've always found that the book is always better, in my opinion.
And most of the times it really is. Yeah. It's rare that you'll get a movie that surpasses the book.
Sure.
A friend of mine, Travis Walton, who wrote Fire in the Sky, when I read the book, I was quite impressed with it. So the movie came out, and the movie was a lot of fun. But it was only half the book.
Right. They
just went all over. It was like they got halfway through the book, and they said, okay, that's enough of that. Now we're just going to go to rest on our own. Right. And so many people were upset about it. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just it didn't stay true to the book. So people got upset. And so that's one of the things. So if somebody offers you a movie deal, you're going to say, okay, you can change my book up, or you're going to fight to keep it straight. I know it's tough.
So if someone offers me a movie deal, I'd say, okay, let's talk contracts. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yes, because I know it's tough a lot of times to keep what you want in the stories, especially if you write out the box. Hollywood is just Hollywood. But it's interesting. So where you plan on going? Headed somewhere big? See, before I let you answer that, one of the reasons I like doing this is because I get to meet people like you. So one day from now, maybe 5 years, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years, I might see your name in lights with a big movie. I said, whoa, I know this guy. How much backstage tickets, man? Come on, now hook me up. And some of these people have to do pretty big stuff. So
I would say, for me, the dream is to make enough money from writing that I don't have to do my 9 to 5.
So I can understand that because you stay pretty busy. Well, he's well, we're not gonna get into that. We'll say that when we bring on for 2 hours. I was gonna tell you what you did before.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But we'll say that for another time. But I mean, because it's just so much. But while I'm saying that, so going back to where you were before you were working at the job now, has any of that showed up in a novel anywhere, in a book anywhere?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so because I know what you were doing for a living, so I was like, and other people I've talked to said, go ahead.
And what has shown up in my work in my writing from work is the anecdotal stuff, the bureaucracy that I've dealt with, the jokes of, hey, like, oh yeah, I wrote it down.
It's going in the book. It's going in the book. No, that's a good thing because you got to keep people's attention. That's what it's all about. Fortunately, that's what it is. And for y'all, or for us, for any of us in these fields, somebody says, well, you're not liking all this. I said, no, but I got the same problems. I have to keep my audience entertained or they're going to leave. I said, they don't want to hear me. They're like, you to entertain me, we're going to see somebody else.
Right, absolutely.
And it's tough, especially when I'm doing news. News is different because today it's so much crap. It's easy to keep people entertained, but other stuff is a lot harder. So, any plans, new novels, something scary, something? I know.
Nope. So I write lighthearted speculative fiction because that's what I like to read, and I firmly believe that there needs to be more humor in the world. So I am trying to do that one story at a time.
So one of my biggest bitches is it's not sci-fi if it don't have humor in it. I don't care how deep and dark and dirty you're dying. If it don't have, it doesn't. See, that's why somebody got mad at me. We were talking about Battlestar Galactica one day. I said, yeah, the old one was campy, but it was funny. I said, the new one was just too, I said, I liked it, but it's just too serious. I said, Starbucks never one time laughed. I'm like, what am I watching here? I said, I've personally been in scary situations under a lot of pressure, and we start cracking jokes.
Oh, yeah, that dark humor just comes out.
It's like whistling in the dark to keep your brain entertained, because you don't want the fear jumping up on you. So it's some people just don't understand that. I don't know. And I agree with you. Humor is a better way. I've never been a big horror fan. It's just not my own person.
So
I already think there's enough blood and gore in the world. I don't need
Sure,
to be
sure.
anymore. But I like hearing that. Some of the writers are wanting to lean that other way, and I'm like,
and I've got a lot of friends that write very dark stuff, and that's what they're good at.
that's what they're doing.
And I've tried writing, dark, serious things, and it just doesn't sell. That's because that's not the way my brain works.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, if you're not into it, it's going to be hard to turn it into something. I mean, I'm sure if you just want to do something generic, you probably could, but it's you really. I mean, I've learned this with all authors and even all illustrators. Generally, when you put your heart in it, it sells much better.
Yep.
You got to be willing to get smacked every once in a while. But,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still have, for the short story market, I have over a 90% rejection rate. And that's considered a really good rate at this point, which is kind of frightening, but that's just the nature of the market.
I've heard that. I was walking with one of the Amazon's vendors for something else. And that's what he was telling me. He said, oh, no. He said, rejection rate's 90%, 95%. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, so figure it this way, Joe. If you write 100 books, 5 of them might make it.
Right.
And he said, and even those aren't guaranteed to be big. He said, just they might make it. I was like, well, that kind of bites. And he's like, no, that's just how it is. He said, but it also encourages people to write harder and write better.
Mm-hmm.
And we get better stories out of it.
Sure.
So that's true. So right now, anything favorite out there? Any genres? I mean, any genres? Any like favorite movies? Any favorite books that are out there?
It's going back a few years, but definitely my favorites are Terry Pratchett's Discworld.
I don't think I know that. You have to
oh my goodness!
You have to send me an email about
that. He wrote a very dry British humor fantasy, second world fantasy that is tongue in cheek, and yet fantastic stories. And so he always looked at whatever problems we're having and found a way to tell you the story, realize that he's addressing some social cultural problem we have right now, and make you laugh about it and realize, we need to work on that.
So we're gonna go 2 more things, and I'm gonna let you get out of here. But so talking about that, year before or last year, year before last, this came up a lot on how are you going to include today's society into a novel, or even if you should. So we do live in a woke society, which is how, ladies and gentlemen, when I say woke, it's whatever woke you want it to be. Okay, I don't want to argue with what it's about. It's but some things it's harder to get into a novel than other things, and a lot of the authors just really kind of said, well, I don't really need to include that. I can just write my story like this. Then later on, if I want to add this type of person or that type of person or this type of person, I can. He said, but the stories aren't, well, they all said, the stories I'm writing really doesn't matter because it's not written to be like that. It's just a story being told. Well, that's a good thing, but I don't know. The younger generations are a little strange now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's another problem. If you decide you want to write for woke, or you're going to cancel out the other 88% of the audience in the country. So it's a dangerous game. That's why it keeps coming up in conversation, because it's like politics. I tell authors all the time, I tell illustrators all the time, leave your politics out of it. And they're like, why? I said, because once you say what politics are, you pick a side, you just lost the other side.
Right.
I said, now back 50 years ago, it wasn't like that, but today it is. I said, so once you choose a side, that's the side you're going to be. And they were, well, you choose. I said, no, I'm a centrist. I don't have to choose a side. I just hate on everybody. So I said, it works good for me. Because I don't pick. But same thing with religion. You can write about religions, and there's all kinds of ways to write about religion. But I tell people, if you're going to choose a religion to hate on, you just lost that audience.
Yep. So my perspective on that is it depends on the story. Mm-hmm. So if the story I'm writing is one that is has characters that have certain perspectives, that doesn't mean that's my perspective, but that is what needs to be in the story to make the story work, to tell that character's story. And so I completely agree with you that I'm not someone that's going to put my politics one way or the other into what I'm doing. Yes, my core beliefs will always come out, just because as you talk to anyone, your core beliefs will come out in what you say.
They're going to sneak out because that's who you are.
But that's not my goal. My goal is to entertain. I look at science fiction fantasy as escapism. And so I want to give something that will make people laugh.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily looking to change the world with the social problems that I'm addressing and make people really think deeply about what they're doing. I'm looking for something to
We
make
can't
them
all
laugh.
be Gene Roddenberry. So.
Right.
Well, somebody asked me it was about Star Trek Discovery, and they said, "Well, I don't understand why so many people hate it." I said, "Well, first off, it just said screw Star Trek lore." I said, so right off the bat, they were in trouble for that, and then they just tried to go too woke. I said, you have to remember we have a big country, and still 80% of Americans don't even know what woke means. I said, so if you're going to try to force it on them, you got to do it in the correct way. And I said, and Discovery just made too many leaps too fast. If they would have just took a season, did this group, took a season, did this group, took a season, it would have been fine. But they tried to do 8 or 9 in one season, and everybody was like, well, I'm not watching that. Personally, I thought Discovery was good sci-fi. I just didn't think it was good Star Trek. That's my own personal opinion. I tell people all the time, I said, I enjoyed Discovery. I thought it was crazy. It was fun. There was a lot of stuff going on. I said, as far as I know, no ship ever traveled to the future in the Federation, so I got to leave that alone. And somebody said, well, I said it 29th century. I said, yeah, isn't that where the doctor's mobile emitter came from? I said, obviously, that's not the same future. It's an alternative. And they were like, oh, I guess that's true. I'm like, yes, that's it. I said, it just got away, I think it just got away from them in general. So that's fine now. I've seen Strange New Worlds. It's solid. It's a strange, nice, solid thing. So stuff like Strange New Worlds or like Mandalorian, stuff like that. You watch any of that?
I have not watched the current season of Mandalorian.
It's good.
I've heard that.
Okay, let me rephrase. At least the last 2 episodes are really good. I'm not gonna take that before, but it was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this: the last episode of Picard was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because the first 2 seasons of Picard, it's not that it sucked. I mean, it kind of did, but it just, I don't know. It just wasn't. It wasn't Picard. I don't know how to say it.
Sadly, my TV watching is usually about 5 years behind, and that came from lived in Germany for about 10 years at a time when streaming Netflix was not a thing, and so once I got back to the U.S., I've just been slowly catching up, and it's been a very slow process, and just watching the things that I like to watch as I can find them and get time to them.
Yeah, most of my TV watching now is assigned between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. because I'm working all the time. So
I am asleep at that time.
So I usually, if my construction company's busy, then I'll be probably sleeping at that time. But like right now, when it's slow and we're catching up on the station, I'll easily be up to 3 or 4 in the morning and stuff. So when I get done with all of that, I'll pop in and turn something sci-fi on. I usually like to watch something I've watched before because if I watch something brand new, I'm gonna stay awake.
Sure.
So I usually try to watch some of them, but it takes a little time to catch up on all of them. And then somebody told me they're making a new Babylon 5. I'm like, okay, why screw with the old one? I'm always funny about when they do remakes.
Yeah, well, of course, the perspective of, well, it did really well before, so it'll obviously do really well again, and maybe it will.
They say the new Avatar is going to break the old one's record, but everybody I've talked to said it was okay, not great, just okay.
Right.
Okay, Avatar fans, don't hate on me. I'm just repeating. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know.
I have not seen it yet either.
I said so don't hate on me because I'm just repeating what's on the web. I said, so don't hate. But it's just, it's part of it. But for you, you might be one of these guys, Stage. You might be we talk to authors all the time. I mean, getting on writing a series, we usually have a handful of writers, but still, you get in there, you do good stories, they're going to keep you.
We'll see.
And then, of course, there's always gaming, and then there's just regular writing for the sake of writing good novels. And I guess you can do all 3. I don't see why you couldn't, but
sure.
I'm not a writer, so I can't say, oh, well, I could write a novel and I could write some storyboards and I could it's never gonna happen. But still, for someone like you might be able to pull it off.
My goal at this point is to shift now from short stories. I'll still be writing some, but shift back over to novels and write more novels.
God knows we need some good ones. I mean, I'm lucky. I get a lot of people who send me books, but I always tell them the same thing: send it to me in audio format because I'm never gonna get time to read it.
Sure.
And they're like, "Why?" I said, "Because I have 2 different jobs: a research company." I said, "It takes up a lot of my time." I said, "I also have a wife. She likes to be have some time herself."
The wife does like to have a little bit of time.
So Sunday belongs to her, and it's hard to make everybody who knows this. Sundays hers. Don't call me. Don't bother me. Don't bug me. And
yeah, we do the Sunday family day as well, and that's been fantastic.
It works out good. Everybody's happy. You know, she don't need we have the bugging her every day that she wants her day. That's fine by me. But it's you know, let me ask you this. So I've been getting mixed reviews on this. So would you consider the current environment of our country in general a good writing environment? I've heard some people say, yeah, I said some people say, oh no, it feels like it's stagnated. Some people say, no, there's a lot more stuff to write about. And I'm like, well, I'm not a writer, so I don't know.
I would say the writing environment is whatever you make of it. So the one of the essays that we've studied here for the conference is talking about where you get your inspiration. And so people will be sitting in their hometown and going, if there's nothing around me I can write about, then someone from the outside comes in and goes, wow, look at all these amazing things. They write a story about this story that's right in front of you. And then they go off and tell the story, and you're upset because, oh, they wrote about the thing that's right here in front of me. And it's all about perspective, looking at things with new eyes. So if you are living somewhere and you think there's no story here, okay, go out and find someone to talk to that you don't know, someone that might know the history about that building down the street that you've always walked past and don't really know anything about. Talk to the old timer on the corner who's lived there for 50 years, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I can tell you about back when your house wasn't even there. That was a cornfield. And you can get some amazing stories like that.
That's one reason I like R.A. Elmore. He tells some great stories. When he starts talking about his art, he's just nonstop. He can out-talk me and Echo put together, which is amazing. We can talk. So it's amazing. One last question, AI. So how do you think, now I've had Jeff Winger was he lives with Tim McCaffrey and Todd McCaffrey and they're friends out in Las Vegas. And a couple of months back, he introduced me to hardcore AI. So I was aware that it was out there, but I wasn't aware of what its potential was.
Sure.
So I still remember this clearly. He comes on the show, we talk about a bunch of stuff, and then he goes, oh wait, before we go, I want to show you this AI stuff. So because he said I've been using it to write comic books. So he said, give me a little story. I gave him like 10, 15 words. This thing wrote an entire comic book, pictures and everything. I mean, it made the little bubbles for it. It made the little pictures, it made the whole story. So I'm sitting there reading it while we're on air. I'm like, some pictures is actually good. And so I'm kind of like, well, this is going to suck for people who do this for a living. But then he told me, well, you can't copyright it. So big companies are not going to buy it. If they can't own it and anybody can use it, they're not going to buy it. So I guess that in one way is a good thing for you. But I know more and more of these contests are wanting to make sure that's not how a story is generated. Now I know with the illustrators, a lot of times there's a pattern to their work, and it starts out with a pencil drawing. So for authors, how would they go about knowing that it wasn't an AI story? It'd have to be some way of running it through a test system, which I'm not the tech guru to tell you that, but I know, like back before the AI stuff, when you're in college writing a paper, they take your paper, send it through a plagiarism checker that checks wherever it's checking on the internet, go, oh no, they pulled this whole paragraph from so-and-so who published in blah year. And that's how the professors know, oh no, you actually plagiarized part of this. And so I know that as AI is growing and building, those systems to check are also growing as well. How effective they are, I'm definitely not the person to talk on that. I just know that, with any new technology, there's always a growing pain period, and there will be spikes and valleys as you're going through until the technology becomes stable. So there's a huge spike of people using the AI art, Midjourney art, just because you can make some really cool pictures. I've made some really cool pictures with it. He made a whole new banner for me. It was like about 25 seconds.
Right, and you can get some pretty cool stuff.
Really nice.
And then people go, oh well, I can use this for everything. Well, and that's where the law comes in, and judges go, nope, you can't copyright it. And so we'll get that spike of interest, a little bit of a lull as things settle down, and then it'll settle out somewhere in the middle. AI is not going away. It will become part of a new normal. What that looks like, I don't think anyone knows.
And I think lately that we have been discussing this, and it looks like it's getting a little too smart for its own good. So most people don't realize it pulls from everything because it has access to the internet. Well, just recently, a friend of mine said he wanted a picture of a dingo fighting a kangaroo. So it came out, it was a 5-legged dingo with a big fat tail and a 3-eyed kangaroo. I was looking at it going, I think the AI might went a little right here. And there was an eye on the kangaroo's tail. It was funny as hell. I was like, I said, I don't think this is what you were shooting for. He said, no, it's actually not even close to what I wanted, but it's going to be like that. So that's a plus for all of us that are out there, because now we're having virtual voices and virtual people. And I see China they have a lookalike human that can cook and clean and talk to you. And I was like, damn it. So they did a thing with it where they did just a face. They put it online and said, and talk to it. And then at the end they said, was it real or was it not? Most everybody thought it was real. So I was like, well, I didn't think it was all going to look like one of those rubbery Barbie dolls to me.
Sure.
And then I noticed when you get serious, it's got a little spot on the side of its head that flashes. So I'm like, how do I not see that white light flashes? It's kind of like, your phone flashes.
Right, yeah.
Obviously funny, but I mean, all that stuff's coming, and I'm not a hater of new technology. I mean, I worked in tech fields for a long time, but there has to come a point where it's helping us, and that. So you do know when Google launched its AI, what its first thing it said was, right?
Where's John Connor?
No, that's what it needed. The question was, how to better mankind? Its answer was, wipe it out and remove it from the planet.
Ooh, no, I missed that one.
So I was like, oh, well, we're just going jumping right into the movies now, man.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article a while back. I said, all you people inventing this stuff, go back and watch the movies for a while before you get too stupid.
Yep.
I said, I'm all for new technologies, but nowadays you make a phone call, you get an algorithm that answers. Something's wrong. It's hard to even find humans anymore.
And that's in the novel I just wrote. That's one of the running gag jokes I have, is that computer that's calling you about your car's extended warranty.
Oh yeah, I love them things. I always hit 0 until somebody answers. My new thing is now, you've reached heaven. Hold on, let me transfer to your hell. Thank you.
I'll have to try that.
The one guy called me back, what are you doing? I said, you called heaven. And obviously this is the wrong number, so I'm going to transfer you where you need to be, which is hell. Have fun. He never called back again. Sometimes, spam calls just suck. Anything else? Any websites or anything?
Yes. So I can be reached at my website, davidhankins.com. And I'm active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I've got links to all those on my website.
So y'all get by his website, check him out, say hello. Anybody needs something written, get him a call. Ever thought of, so there's a new gaming company he wants. It's about 5 years old now. It's a big company. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's pretty famous. He came down. He's offering everybody $100,000 to start. He needs authors. He needs illustrators. He also needs tech people. But he's hiring 100 people right off the bat. And he's just looking for people who can tell stories or write stories. And I don't know what kind of games you're writing because I didn't get into it that much, but the only thing I could do for him would be tech work anyway. If I tried to write a story, it would just be funny. And but I got a good job anyway. But it's funny to me that it's growing so fast. And a good one of the other guys I talked to in the winters, he's going to Japan. He's got a job in Japan. They fly him over there, pay him for everything, setting him up in a house. Now, how long it lasts or how long they stay there, that's anybody's best guess. And he doesn't have a family either, so it's a little different. And you have a family, so you have to be worth it to pick up.
Right.
And I'd tell my wife let's move to Japan. She'd look at me like, yeah, we're not moving to Japan, baby. I was offered a job just last year out here in LA for $250,000 a media director. My wife said, yeah, and did hell freeze over? I said, no, baby. She said, well, it's going to have to freeze over before we go to California. I was like, but no, she's not coming out here. She's a bayou girl. I'll never get out here in the big city. She said, New Orleans is not a big city anyway. I'm like, whatever, I'm not arguing with you. Just do what you want. It's so, where to go. So you said you like fantasy. So you're talking about any realms of fantasy. Right?
Any realms of fantasy. I have published stuff in urban fantasy as well as second world fantasy. And my winning story is urban fantasy. And so that's what my first novel is going to be as well.
So any inspiration, anybody who inspires you, any authors, any favorite authors? Or?
Well, as I mentioned, Terry Pratchett, which I highly recommend you check him out.
I'm giving you my email.
Yeah.
We leave today.
Yep, will do. And then growing up, really my big inspirations were Terry Brooks, Terry Goodkind, Robert Jordan, David Weber, just kind of those big authors from the 80s and 90s, which was my formative years as I was learning to read. That's what I pick up at the library and the bookstore.
It's funny, when I came to work with all these people, I had no idea who David Asimoff was. I also didn't know who, what's his name, Love, whatever his name is. And everybody's like, really? You do sci-fi, you don't know who these people are? I'm sorry, people.
Yeah, my sci-fi and fantasy education was, the authors from that era forward. I was aware of the names of those that were before, and I've read a couple of them, and I freely admit that I need to read more.
So one last thing, this has nothing to do with anything we were talking about. Elon Musk, evil dictator. Anytime I talk about Elon, first thing comes to mind. I don't know if you've ever seen Moonraker. I always think it because he wants to build this colony on Mars. He wants to have 10 kids, so he's going to have 20 kids. He's going to get Mars started on colony. It always refers me back to that Moonraker movie. I'm thinking, oh, is he going to go there and become the evil dictator and blow up Earth? He's a great guy, but he makes me nervous. Have you kept up with him or know anything that's going on with his crazy stuff?
I've kept up a little bit on what's happening with the news, and really not any strong opinions one way or the other. I appreciate some of the technologies that have come out of what he has worked to produce. I know when I was taking my master's class, I researched Tesla when it was still fairly young, and I've been kicking myself for not buying stock in that thing back in the early days.
I know, me too. A friend of mine said this is like the first year that he bought his Tesla. I don't know who this guy is.
Right. But I was looking at the business plan that he had. I was like, this is actually a solid business plan, and clearly it's worked.
And he's gone along. Everybody couldn't believe he bought Twitter and lost $100 billion. But he's got most of that back. He was down to 100. He's up to 2 now. Give him another year, he'd be back over 3. He'd be the richest man in the world again. I like SpaceX, Tesla, and I got to see, like, California always cracks me up. I was listening to Governor Newsom talk the other day. He goes, well, we're going to make all electric cars, so that's fine. I said, but your electric kid can't even handle what you got now. You're going to go add 40 million electric cars to it.
Yeah. Infrastructure is always, a big problem with major technology change like that.
It is. So, I'm looking for a different future. I'm hoping they figure something out. And you know what? Writers like y'all can help them along, because a lot of what you and I just talked about was stories that were written in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s.
That's the stuff that we're using today.
That's the stuff we're using today. And people get weird about it. And somebody called me one day, that's not true. I said, really? I said, would you like me to get a list of stories and go through them for you? I said, I'll go back to the Forbidden Planet. I said, we'll talk about what they were using there that we use today. I said, I said, everybody had a flip phone communicator for years. Right. I said, until they gave us one we couldn't resist. I was like, I said, we have beds now that weigh you, take your temperature, can take blood. I said, we're really moving along with a lot of these things. I said, y'all should pay attention. And I said, these were authors that wrote this. I said, this isn't just one author. Because everybody's like, what's a Gene Roddenberry? No. Gene, I don't even know when Gene quit writing, and people didn't know this. But Gene Roddenberry wrote country TV shows before he wrote Star Trek.
I didn't know that.
As a matter of fact, if you go back and look at his country TV shows, it's Star Trek without space. He's doing the exact same thing, except now he's in space and on a horse.
A good story is a good story.
It's a good story. And again, when you were talking about humor, that's a perfect example. That's one of the things that made that so endearing to people. There's lots of comedy in there, lots of stupidness in there. There's lots of serious science. And, they use NASA just like the new Star Treks all use NASA.
And there's a relatively new subgenre of science fiction that solar punk that is looking at that positive future. They look at the perspective of we're actually living a better today than we did yesterday. I have medical problems. I have pills that I can take for it. I have a major accident. I can actually get things repaired that couldn't have been repaired 50 years ago, 100 years ago. And so looking at what we have now, how are we going to improve in the future? And so it's a subgenre of science fiction that is specifically looking for those positive impacts for the future. And I think the science fiction has always been fantastic for helping us see what the future could be.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I know y'all heard us talking about different things earlier. I got a good friend of mine who wrote a science fiction novel about COVID, basically, 5 years before it came out.
Yeah.
And he wrote the whole thing down. So he was getting ready. They were getting ready. He found somebody to publish it, and it was getting ready to go out, and then COVID actually hit.
And they're like, nope, we can't publish it.
No, sorry, that's going bye-bye. You can't do that.
Yeah.
But I'll give you some good material for something to write on. So just recently, we found out what telomeres are, and but it helps us. It ages us. So they cut out. They're long when they start out, and the older you get, they shrink. But just recently, scientists figured out how to stop them in rats and gnats and lambs and stuff like that. So they can stop them. So if you stop the telomere, you stop aging. You don't age anymore. Whatever age you are, it just stops. And that's not that it doesn't make you immortal because other things can kill you.
Right.
But diseases and stuff like that are not going to kill you anymore. So it'll have to be something crazy. So now there's another one working on extending them, making them grow back. So for someone like me, it would be pretty painful, I imagine, but they could knock 20 years off my age, and then they stop it. So, okay, this may be good sci-fi, but
sure.
So here's the real fun part about it. So what happens in 100 years after we've been doing this for 100 years?
And that sci-fi explores questions like that too.
Yes,
I know there's books and TV
So-
shows that have, all right, we've become immortal. Let's jump forward 100, 200 years. What does society look like now? And it creates that conversation.
Well, go ahead and give me your website one more time. We're going to lock it up.
All right. You can reach me at davidhankins.com, DAVIDHANKINS. And I've got all my social media on there, short stories I've published, and you can learn a little bit more about me.
And ladies and gentlemen, in a couple of months, probably about 2 months, I'm having back, and we'll get you bring some of your work with you, and we'll discuss stuff like
Fantastic.
that. And just be comfortable. And if you got anything new you want to talk about, we can talk about that too. We can call some crazy science stuff as well, because I keep telling everybody, you better go back and start looking at them old movies because it's coming, people. Let me change the side picture right quick, so I can make sure everything goes off. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope y'all enjoyed that. It's always fun when we have a good guest. And before anybody asks, yes, I always do give the authors more time than I give the illustrators, because it's a different kind of